Psychotherapist Marci Gray joins us now to talk about how we can overcome struggles like the ones Lorraine, Brent, and Julie just shared and make it through to the end of this crazy ride. So Marci, if one thing is clear, it's that as a society, we've suffered. What can we do to get back to normal?
We have suffered. A lot of us have been through so much through the last 2 years. What we want to think about, though, is not necessarily normal, but a new normal, right? Let's think about the things that we've learned over the last 2 years. What are the things we now value? What are the things we don't want to take for granted? Those are the things we want to keep with us and we want to bring into our new normal. And we want to move forward very cautiously, but optimistically with new ideas about how we want to see our future.
Great point there. Lorraine mentioned that her son, unfortunately, has struggled with addiction. What do we do when we or someone we love has an addiction? How can we help?
So it's so difficult sometimes when you're supporting somebody with addictions. So really what you want to do for sure is get some supports for yourself. And that's educational support, so you understand the addiction that they're going through, but also your own psychological support, because it can be really taxing and straining for yourself. You want to be able to support them in ways that are not lecturing, right? You don't want to lecture, you don't want to preach, but you also don't want to finance or you don't want to enable them as well. So there's a little bit of a fine balance there. One way you can support them is through non-monetary ways of support. So that can be giving them a ride somewhere, helping them to set up an addictions program, other non-monetary practical supports like toiletries, groceries, things like that. You also want to consider that you want them to go through harm reduction rather than, when you have someone that you love with an addiction, all you can think of is just them stopping and not having any addiction at all. You want to consider that harm reduction might be the way to go for them in terms of just reducing the amounts that they may be consuming. And then you just want to let them know ways in which you can be there for them as much as possible.
Yeah, give them a soft place to land without the judgment. And I think that's really difficult for us to do as parents, especially if we're seeing our children struggling. And speaking of that, how can we handle
Absolutely.
the pressures of just feeling responsible for other people? That could be people we employ. And, you heard Brent, he had to let go people, and that breaks your heart. These are people's livelihoods. Or just your own kids. You feel like you've got to carry around the weight of their mental health struggles.
Exactly. So what we want to consider is what we're responsible for versus what we're in control of. I think we learned through the pandemic, there's so much that we're not in control of. And there's things, therefore, that we're not responsible for. So, you can be there as a support and sometimes offer guidance and support, but sometimes we're just not responsible. And sometimes it's because we think that we're in control of a situation or we want to be in control of a certain situation. So even with our kids, right, there's certain limitations that we have in terms of responsibility. With our employees, there's certain limitations we may have.
Now, I'm going to ask you to read the tea leaves a little bit here because I want to look forward and see what might happen with our mental health struggles as the world starts to open up. Do you see how things might shift?
So it depends on where you are. Some people are just waiting for everything to open up and they're ready to get things going. And other people are a little bit more apprehensive. They're cautious. They're moving forward cautiously. Really, we all got to get ready slowly for change again, right? So we're all looking at adjusting and readjusting into change again. We're not post-pandemic yet. We're still going through a transition where we're now starting to open things up, where changes are in terms of regulations are changing again. And again, that's another adjustment for people. Some people who have a lot of anxiety are still feeling the anxiety and still cautiously wanting to move forward. And others are still suffering from a lot of loss over the time of the pandemic. People have lost loved ones, they've lost jobs, they've lost in terms of finances. So people are still trying to recover, and that's okay. We've got to allow ourselves some time and space to go through this yet another transition.
Yeah, change seems to be the only constant that we can actually rely on these days. Marci, thank you so much for the information. You always give really good information, and we appreciate having you as part of this show.